What's up, everyone? I'm Scott.
And I'm Jason.
And you are listening to Liquid Carnage, my friend. Big news in the world today. Baseball fans out there, Shohei Ohtani, the Japanese phenom pitcher and hitter, $700 million to your boys, the Dodgers.
I don't understand how a player that was hurt, he finished on the injured reserve, how he can get that much money.
Because he can play both. He won't pitch again until 2025, but he can still hit and hit effectively. In fact, before we started today's show, I was reading that he is deferring $68 million a year of his contract every year to be paid out between 2034 and 2043. So it's essentially he's getting $2 million a year right now, and everything else is being deferred for his basically his retirement plan.
And the Dodgers agreed to that?
Yeah.
Oh my God, morons!
Yeah. That is either very sound projecting of your cash flow, or because you have to figure the way the salary caps are going in sports by now. By then, $68 million might be the base salary for a player.
Well, we've talked about it before that, when Patrick Mahomes signed the 10-year, $350 million contract, he was the highest paid quarterback, and now he's probably like seventh.
He is
3 years later. So, it's all relative, I guess. But yeah, $70 million for a guy who was hurt last year. I don't know.
But he's still won the MVP unanimously. He missed the final month of the season and won unanimously.
Wow. Okay. And the Angels didn't even make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Once again, I don't understand sports.
Yeah. Neither do I. But that's
why. Then again, let's be honest. It's not sports. It's entertainment. And when it's entertainment, a lot of things can be channeled. A lot of things can be paid for and justified. I just got done watching the Bye Bye Barry special on Amazon Prime. Basically talked about Barry Sanders' career and how he kind of abruptly ended his career.
He did, man. He walked away in his prime. Maybe right past his prime.
Yeah, he was 31. They said that he was only 1,400 yards away from breaking the record. Had he played as long as Emmitt Smith did, who was 1 year behind him, he would have probably had 21,000 yards.
Oh, wow.
That's how good he was. And, the other thing they say is, like, all the Detroit people saying, they always try to compare Emmitt to Barry Sanders. Give me a break. If Barry Sanders would have played on those Dallas Cowboy teams, he would have, it would have been, he would have had 5 championships probably.
Oh, no question. No question.
So
for the kids out there listening, Barry Sanders was a prime, probably the best running back of the 90s for the Detroit Lions football club. Emmitt Smith was, watching him play against the Cardinals back then twice a year was devastating. But when you played Barry Sanders, anytime he touched the ball was a potential touchdown. Didn't matter where you were at the game. He was magical to watch. When he walked away, it was sad, but I understood. Same thing with Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, Calvin Johnson, I think I could understand that physically it was starting to get to him as a player. Yeah. Like physically, the physical demands of wide receiver in the NFL was starting to get to that point where his body, I believe, was starting to break down. Barry Sanders didn't have that. He never was injured. He only played 11 seasons and had 14,000 yards.
I thought he played 9 seasons.
No, he started in 89 and ended in 99. So he played the 89 through 99 seasons. So he's in for 11 seasons. But one of the things that they talked about that kind of, now we're circling back to the show today, is that he basically sent a fax to the Lions on the opening day of training camp saying that he was going to retire. He had flown to London to be on a vacation and retired by fax.
Man, good for him.
So could you imagine they think they're going to have Barry Sanders rushing for the all-time rushing title, and
finished
then they
5-10.
get nothing. Yeah, they got absolutely nothing.
Yeah, then they finished 5-11,
5-11.
6-10.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, I get it. If you're not going to win it all at that age and you've done everything you can do, maybe it's better to walk away.
Yeah, and and I think that kind of got me thinking, how do we know, what are the telltale signs for us to know when it's time to walk away? Whether it's sports, whether it's relationships, whether it's jobs, whether it's a business that you run. Like how do we as a society, or how do we as humans determine when it's time to walk away?
That's a great question. But before I get into that, I do want to give an interesting side note because I did bring up Calvin Johnson, the wide receiver for the Detroit Lions that retired early as well. Uh, Little known fact: Calvin Johnson went to college, got drafted, had a Hall of Fame career, got inducted into the Hall of Fame, all while Tom Brady was still playing football.
Yeah, that's right. That's a great point, man.
I mean, he was Tom Brady was already winning Super Bowls for the Patriots before Calvin Johnson went to college for all of that. So, fun fact, on with the show.
I think that it brings up an interesting dilemma too, because some might argue that quarterbacks have even tougher than running backs when it comes to when to step away. Those last 2 years when Emmitt Smith came to Arizona, it
Yeah,
was a money grab.
yeah,
He was not the Emmitt Smith of old. you
no,
know,
but
Tom Brady. Some might argue that he could still play today if he wanted to, but he
yeah, but
walked
how effective
away.
are you? I mean, I guess when you get on this subject, there's a couple sayings that are out there in this world that really go hand in hand with what we're talking about today. It's better to burn out than fade away. Is a very interesting way of looking at this. Or it's better to die a hero than live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Okay. Okay. All right. And,
Yeah.
and like when you think of your favorite football players,
Uh huh.
have you identified certain ways that people left the game or retired from the game that are more impactful in your memory than others?
Yeah. And I don't want to keep this all about football, but I will say Brett Favre. When he just wouldn't walk away, it
Yeah.
became embarrassing to a certain point. When every August when training camp opened up there for a few years, it was Favre watch. Will he or won't he? And keeping everybody hostage like that, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah. I in recent memory, I was thinking about Albert Pujols. Remember there was when he was 39, 40, it was sad to see Albert Pujols decline his skill sets. And then the mad push in the summer to get the 700 home runs. Remember when he had that little glimpse of the old self where he was like 13 away, and then all of a sudden he got on a home run tear in his final season, and he got to 700 home runs, and he walked away, you know, and I thought, here's a guy who I was so sad about him leaving his legacy. And then somewhere inside of me said, you know what? I've got 2 good months in me. Let's do this. And he just went on that home run tear, got his 700 home runs, and then he retired, with 700 home runs.
What I think is interesting about Albert Pujols, and trying to stay on today's topic, but you just keep up bringing up names that are fun. They want to say 21 or 22 when he came up for his rookie year with the Cardinals in 2001.
Right.
But they never really found his birth certificate, his original one. They said they have a copy, and the numbers were probably fudged a little bit, so he might have been actually 26 or 27. His rookie year. So the fact that he was able to play at that level for that length of time is very it's fun. It's cool. It's nice to see that he held on. It's very Tom Brady-esque where he held on probably a little bit longer than he should have.
Right.
But still, you're right. He hit that milestone, and it's nice to see him walk away on top like that. You leave on your terms, and I think in life that's anyone's goal is to leave on your terms.
Why do people hang on to those and extend terms beyond where they should have been?
Fear. I want to say it has a lot to do with fear, because you get comfortable with where you're at and what you're doing, and you're afraid to go do something else. And some people thrive in that. Other people don't. Um, it's it's an interesting topic. You look at like the political climate today, where people are walking away from congressional jobs.
Right.
They just don't want to run for reelection. I think that says more about the state of our American political system, that we have career long politicians, just washing their hands of everything and walking away. I think it's interesting to see how people change jobs or even end relationships, and what their thought process is. And I think you and I have talked about this before, that there's 8 billion people on this planet. So, I mean, there's 8 billion different ways of thinking.
And each of them, while they have their own reasons, some of them, some of them are retiring on top. Some of them are retiring in disgrace. People, the reasons why people do, retire, you're right. It's all different. For each one of us has a different reason, right? Like Barry Sanders was still in his prime.
Yeah.
Was still in his prime. I'm trying to think off the top of my head of other players that were still in their prime. Jim Brown.
Yeah.
Jim Brown retired after 5 seasons? Like he wasn't even in his 30s yet, I don't think.
It was 7 or 8 seasons.
Okay, so it was he could have played a lot longer too. What is the driving factor of why, he quits? And let's be honest, every single one of us, everyone who's listening to this, is going to get to that point of, when do I retire?
Yeah.
When do I retire? Do I do it at 62, 65, 67? I want to work till I'm 94. Everyone's got that different question of when is enough, or when is it time to walk away? And it is fascinating how different it is for every single player. Tom Brady said, well, can I still perform? Yes, I can. I'm going to keep playing. Yeah, but you're going to lose your wife and your whole, but I can still play. Wow. Okay. So for him, it was an easy question to answer. I can still play. I'm one of the elite quarterbacks in this game. Why would I retire? Well, your wife wants you to come home and start spending time with her. Why would I retire? You know what I mean? Like, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I get that. And it's interesting, because I go back to my previous career, when I was in banking. And it was, I got laid off right when the economic downturn, was in full swing. And by that point, I had talked at that point, and I was already starting to like figure out what my next step was going to be, where I was going to go, because I didn't know. It was never a question of if, it was always a question of when I was going to leave the bank, and there's always that fear of like, well, I don't want to leave until I have something. Well, they made that change for me. They just decided, no, we're laying off people. Here you go. So they walked away from me before I could walk away from them. But at the same time, it was the best thing that ever happened to me professionally, because I probably would have been dead at 35 from stress in that world. And also, it gave me a chance to go chase what I'm good at, not what I thought I just had to do,
Sure. Yeah. I find that, especially when you're talking about a career, so much of the reason for staying at a job longer than you want to is outside of what we have control over initially, right? Well, I've got to have money coming in, so I can't leave this job. I've got to have money coming in. Even though, no, I need to leave this job. It's not good for me. It's not good for my family. It's not good for my health, whatever, but we don't, right? Because the fear, like you said earlier, the fear of losing out and not having any money is greater than the pursuit of something bigger and better and different.
Yeah. And that's it. We often put our responsibilities in front of our desires, which is what you should do. I mean, we have a family to take care of your family, but you have to calculate your risks for that. Janice and I are always debating that. It's always well, if this goes south, I'll be looking for a new job. It's turned into a joke between us, between the projects we work on for our jobs and whatnot. And we were talking about it the other day. I am halfway done with my working life. I've been working for 21 years. I'm going to work my professional career. My goal is to work my professional career until I'm 62. So that gives me 19 years and I'm out. Then I will step down and figure out something else to do. Um, what that means for us, and I told her, like, if you want to go do something else, I'm stable enough in what I do right now, I think, that you can go chase that. And then when you feel stable enough of that, if I feel like I need to make a change, then I'll go chase that. But it's as long as one of us is able to cover the bills, and I think I've set up our household very economically. We give the other one the opportunity to go chase what they want to go do and go fulfill that level of occupational happiness. Make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it does. So many people though don't have that freedom when it
Oh
comes
yeah.
to their working lives, right? I mean, like I know people that said, yeah, I'm gonna have to work into my 70s. I just know it. There's no, there's no option for me. I'm not gonna be able to survive where I am right now. I'm gonna have to keep going. Yeah, but you work at a job you hate. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I get it. Like you maybe creating the flexibility to end on your own terms is part of that solution that you need to have that planned out of. I can do this anytime that I feel like I'm ready to do it. And prepare myself financially, emotionally, physically so that when I know it's time and I can do it without saying, well, no, I know it's time for me, but I don't have enough money, so I have to stay.
And I think you said something very interesting right there when you talked about the emotional part of it. Because I think a lot of people become emotionally attached to their jobs, whether it's a love or hate emotion. They become almost trauma bonded to those positions if you're not careful. And some people get the idea that that job won't be done if they're not there to do it. And the basis of jobs are, it's why you take your vacation, because if you die, someone's going to replace your job. Someone's going to replace you. So your job will go on, whether you want to believe it or not. So you have to figure out a way to emotionally prepare yourself for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever had that issue with a relationship where it's not good, it's not a toxic thing, but you hang on longer than you should have?
Yeah, yeah,
I
I
mean,
would
I
say
know
that.
I think back, it's like, yeah, the writing was on the wall and I didn't make the plunge. What were the reasons for not taking the quicker, ending a relationship? Those are kind of the hard parts. It's like, well, emotionally, I don't want to hurt someone, or emotionally, you
Yeah,
know, I don't know how I would move on without this person, whatever the reasons are. But even though those kind of discussions are difficult because you're dealing with another person. So it's not
yeah,
even just you and is your heart ready for it. You also have to deal with the other person that you're deciding whether or not you stay in the relationship.
yeah. I went through that years ago, and it was a doomed relationship from the start, just the way everything happened. And it was only, I want to say, 4 or 5 months when it was all said and done. But it was one of those where it just, if it could have gone wrong, it did. Neither of us handled it properly because we weren't in an emotionally mature enough space to handle it. And it just it for the time there, it wrecked a lot. But I think it helped both of us in hindsight, or at least I can speak for myself, I can't speak for her, to start putting things in perspective, to get pieces put in place. Because the funny thing is she told me to read a few books that would help me, quote unquote, heal. And I laughed at her. I didn't laugh at her, but I kind of laughed at the idea, like, I don't need to heal. And then the pandemic happened, and I went through a little bit of a depression from not being able to go out and whatever else. And I finally read the books. It's like, well, shit, maybe she was right. And
Yeah, I
so
mean,
I appreciate that. At least when she walked away, she offered some kind of friendly advice, and I respect that.
yeah, I remember that in one particular relationship, I was like, well, I'm not going to break up with her, but I'll make it so subconsciously, I'll make it so uncomfortable that she'll just want to break up with me.
Yeah.
And I realized that, how easy it was for me just to, give away the choice of my life and just say, let her decide.
Yeah.
I don't want to decide, which means that if said, hey, let's work through this, I would have been with her forever. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, wow, that was the life lesson I learned. It's like, no, it may not always be right. It may not always be the best decision, but as long as you make it for yourself and with the best heart, you can at least move forward.
Yeah.
You might make a mistake. You might have made a mistake quitting a job or quitting a person or, quitting a sport. But if you do it by listening to your heart, you can always, you can always find solace in every split or every, calling it quits. If you're doing it for you and not doing it because someone else told you that you need to do it, I can live with that. Even if and believe me, some of these decisions have been stupid as I look back, like, oh my gosh, Jason, you really are a dummy. You could have done this a heck of a lot better, a lot easier, a lot, more sound than you did. But at least I can say, but I
Yeah.
own it. That's what I own it.
Yeah, and I agree. And I'm in the same boat. And I think it's one thing you learn about going through life is when you're going to make a life altering decision, whether it be professionally, personally, you have to be honest with yourself about what it is you want, what you're trying to accomplish, where you're trying to go. And that's something I can really appreciate from a business sense. And I'll use, a football team for the way their salary cap structured is as an example, where if you have a new general manager and head coach that come in and you've got all these players that don't fit your system, the Cardinals are a perfect example. Um, is it better to cut your losses like early on, just cut the players, trade the players, eat the money that they're owed now to give yourself a fresh start a little bit down the road? Having that savvy and that self realization and actualization to say this is not good for what we're trying to do. So we need to take the pain up front to make it work down the road.
Yeah. I mean, with the Cardinals, I remember Hassan Reddick.
Yeah.
We let him go, and the very next year he was in contention, or maybe he won the sack title,
Yeah. Yep.
something like that. Like, okay, so that was a mutual breakup. Hassan Reddick's probably saying, "Yeah, I play for a shitty team, but I did better once I left another team. They might have been a
Yeah.
better team, but they were toxic for my career."
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And that, I mean, you look at like professionally, how many people that we've come across, we've met, that have left jobs they hate, and you see them a few months down the road, they're after they started a new job, and you just ask them how are things going, and they say, "Man, it's amazing. The best thing I ever did was leave that job." And I openly said, you've heard me say it for years, the best thing that ever happened professionally was being laid off from that bank. I feel like I found my place with what I'm doing now, but I was so miserable looking back. I am surprised I lasted as long as I did doing what I did.
So maybe part of the secret of when it's the right time is when you're comfortable with the choice.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because I look at our EP and he's very good at just when he's done, he's done. When he's cutting and running, and he's not cutting and running, but when he's done, he's on to the next one. He's not going to tell you until it happened 2 weeks ago. And he's done very well for himself with that. Professionally, personally, I don't know. We don't talk about that aspect a lot, but um, I respect that. It's he's very self aware on when he's done in a situation, and it's time for him to go find a better situation.
Yeah, I mean, that was one thing that I kind of got from this documentary about Barry Sanders. I don't think Barry Sanders has any sort of regrets about leaving the game the way he did.
No.
Sure, I'm sure he might have said, "Man, I wonder what I would have liked if I, had gotten the record." But I don't think he looks at that and says, "You know what, man, I made a huge mistake in my life. I wish I hadn't done it." I don't think he
Yeah.
thinks that way at all.
No, I don't think so either. I think he's very content with what he did, with how he did it. I think a lot of people are very content with what they did and how they did it. I think Michael Jordan's another great example of someone that walked away, well, 3 times in total. The first time, depending on the conspiracy theory, might have been about gambling, but the second time after his second three-peat, he looked done. He looked like he was ready to retire. He had 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs. Like, the man was solid. And then a few years later, it was probably 3 years later, he comes out of retirement to go play for the Wizards for 2 years.
I remember that. Yeah.
I mean, I remember watching Michael Jordan on the Wizards in college and being like, damn, he should have stayed retired. Like,
Well,
he was still better than probably most people on the court, but it's still kind of sad though, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I felt kind of like that with Kobe Bryant. That last year,
Yeah.
he was not. I mean, don't get me wrong. Those players like that, of course, but they're always going to be great. But there was just something missing from the last year of Kobe Bryant's year
Yeah.
that the people who are avid fans recognize quickly and say, man, he's lost a step.
Yeah.
And you know what the best part about this whole discussion is that no one in this world said, man, I can't believe he lost a step. Everyone knows that Father Time gets all of us, right?
He's undefeated.
He's undefeated. He's going to get all of us. And so we know when we're watching like Kobe Bryant's last year, we know that Father Time is getting him.
Yeah.
But we're sad that this is the last image that we're going to get.
Yeah. Well,
right?
It goes back to, it's better to burn out than fade away. It's better to go out in the blaze of glory.
You always talk about Fonzie and the shark, right?
Yeah. Once you jump the shark.
Once you jump the shark, you've officially gone a bridge too far.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the part that I think all of us run into at some point when we're watching sports, or like I look at, some of the people, these Congress people that are retiring, and they're in their 80s. They're, like Dianne Feinstein. I mean, she died in office, but she was not the giant in her final days that she was as the pioneer of women in politics, right? And so you're sad not only, well, I don't know. I looked at it as, even if I didn't agree with her politics, I'm looking at a woman who should have probably left earlier than she did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and Father Time's undefeated. And obviously we're coming up on an election where that's going to be a big topic frankly, for both candidates, unless something happens on the GOP side. Both candidates are going to be dealing with this. I mean, you're, almost 80, you're in your 80s, and you're going to run for a position that's a highly stressful position that's going to put, all those things. There is something to be said of, maybe Barry Sanders had it right.
Yeah. I mean, that's true.
Because what it does leave you with is, man, what if he had stayed the other 4 or 5 years of his, because Emmitt Smith retired at 37. So that would have given Barry Sanders 6 more years. He averages 1,200 yards. That's 7,200 yards. He's up to 22,000 yards rushing.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, you know what I mean? So maybe that's what the greatest part about Barry Sanders, what he did, was leaving us that discussion.
That's true.
Say, I'm sure Michael Jordan, man, what if Michael had just stayed with the Chicago Bulls? They could have had 8 championships.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like 8 in a row, 9 in a row, because he left kind of in his, prime. So, maybe that's the best part.
I think that's where we'll kind of wrap up today's discussion. When you talk about the what ifs, when's the best time to walk away? It happens probably a lot more in sports and than we want to, we can go on about that all day, but it's interesting for people to take a look at that. And when you take a look back at your life, when did you stay too long? When did you not stay long enough? And I think that's what we want to hear about today. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all at Liquid Carnage. When did you stay too long? When did you leave too early? What are your regrets about it? We want to hear about it. The holiday season is upon us. The EP is still looking for 2 to 3 of our favorite fans to hit him up at Liquid_EP so he can give them a surprise holiday gift. So hit him up, Liquid_EP on Twitter and the Instagram.
I'm going to do some research on the quote, but there was a great quote. They were talking about a person who was a famous person, and I'm going to get the quote back, but they were talking about he started getting dementia, or the person started getting dementia, and the quote was, "In life, some lives are taken way too soon, other lives way too late."
Yep.
And I feel like that image is sticking in my head of, that sometimes waiting too long is just as bad as going too early. There's a fine spot of what's right or what's wrong, but, hey, Father Time's undefeated, baby. I love it. I mean, that's pretty much it.
That's true. I think that being said, Jason, take us home.
Hey, we appreciate you listening, everybody. Thank you so much. That was Scott. I am Jason.